Hello, and welcome back to our CyberconIQ studio. Today we are hosting our very first collaboration event between CyberconIQ's very own founder and CEO, Dr. James Norrie, joined by founder and owner of My Girlfriend's Wardrobe in downtown York, Alex Hammond. Now, you might be wondering what the CEO of a cybersecurity company and the owner of a consignment shop have in common. Well, I'll tell you. They both are forced to deal with cybercriminals and cyber threats on a daily basis. Follow along with us today as we discuss our unique understanding of the intersection of cybersecurity and behavioral science that gives us insights on how these two distinct but related factors increase the online risk for both corporations and consumers alike.
And welcome to our viewers, our Facebook Live event coming to you right now from our CyberconIQ studios right here in York, Pennsylvania. And you'll see that my guest, Alex Hammond, and I are completely socially distanced here in the studio. And so, Alex, with your permission, I think so our viewers can hear me better. Maybe I'm going to remove my mask. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and you're going to leave your mask on?
Yep.
Okay. So, folks, there we are. We're very respectful here of COVID-19. We want to make sure that we keep everybody safe and happy over these holidays. Very important time of year. And that brings us around to the topic of my latest white paper, which is available on our website at www.cyberconiq.com. I sound like I have my radio voice on. So anyway, you can get more details on the white paper there. But it is called Why Cybercriminals Feast During the Holidays Too. And I want our viewers to recollect that everything we do here at CyberconIQ, we don't want to sling fear. We don't want people to be afraid. We want to empower you with knowledge and the kinds of information that can keep you safer and online and even physically during the holidays, happy and safe. And our objective really is to make our viewers feel less afraid. So I want to report, I think, that if you looked at crime data, so as an example, if you looked at the first full second quarter of COVID-19 crime data that ran from April to June of this year, we saw an enormous 230% increase in online threats related to COVID-19. And these were people preying on your vulnerabilities and your anxieties because this makes us all anxious. We are during a period of time in our country and around the world where the pandemic makes people uneasy, if not downright afraid. And everybody responds slightly differently. So during a period where we already have heightened anxiety and people are already perhaps afraid, we want to bring some information that I think will help make them feel a little bit safer and maybe take some of the anxiety away during the holidays. Now, during the holiday period, one of the reasons the cybercriminals prey so intently is because they follow the money. Classic line, right? Criminals are going to go where the money is. And during the holidays, we're all out and about, including in your shop right here in downtown York. So why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers so that they know a little bit more about you and what you do, Alex?
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Alexandria Hammond, and I own My Girlfriend's Wardrobe in downtown York. We have been in business for just under 9 years. And it'll be 9 years in January. We started out as an online-only business, and we expanded to a brick and mortar, and we carry women's designer and name brand clothing, shoes, and accessories.
Wonderful. Well, and the fact that you're online today, which is you started online, actually you added the physical location after, is an interesting migration in the opposite direction to what many retailers maybe did, where they started first with their bricks and mortar and then morphed online. So you more than anybody, Alex, would probably understand some of the crazy and wonderful ruses that the cyber criminals use to deceive us. And I think you have a particular story you want to share with our viewers.
Yes, I have a couple. So the first one is return fraud. And thankfully, I haven't had many issues related to this, knock on wood.
Knock on wood, you're very lucky. We're knocking on real wood here in the studio on your behalf.
And I actually found a recent example of return fraud that I would like to share with you guys right now. And this particular example is specific to TJ Maxx's and Marshall's. And so what
stores I go to frequently.
Yes, and this can also happen online. So people can be a victim of this online. But these people go in to either the store or they go online. They purchase items. Let's say they purchase an authentic Louis Vuitton bag. They will then take that Louis Vuitton bag either back to the store or they'll return it to the online consignment store they bought it from, like myself, and they'll send back a counterfeit.
Wow.
So at stores like TJ Maxx and Marshall's, their store associates aren't trained in authentication. And so they don't know that the item that they're taking back is counterfeit. and then they just retag it and put it back on the floor for sale.
You know, Alex, I'm reminded that I should point out to our viewers then that this is interesting because this is something that seems to cross over to both physical locations, to actually kind of a traditional way, right? The hacks and attacks that involve just our normal things in a store, and online. So this sounds to me like what I often tell my students. I'm also a professor of cybersecurity and strategy at York College, proudly right here in York, Pennsylvania. But it's interesting because I tell my students all the time, don't be confused that cybercrime is a new kind of crime, because it's often not. It's just the online version of things that have been happening for as long as we've had retail, right?
Exactly.
So it sounds to me like return fraud, whether that happens in a store or happens online, is the classic ruse of bait and switch.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Classic crime.
Exactly. Especially with online, I've heard stories from other store owners. They've shipped items to a customer, new customer usually, and they've gotten back an empty box, just completely empty, or they've gotten back boxes that are weighed with trash that kind of equal the weight of that item. So it's much harder for the store owner to prove that the box they got actually had the trash in it, because it's going to weigh what the bag weighed when it was shipped.
Wow.
So they are really sophisticated with
very
what they
sophisticated,
do.
very sneaky and sophisticated.
Yes.
Okay. So our ruse one to be aware of is watch for the bait and switch. And for our viewers that have teenage children, by the way, this doesn't work for your children, right? I can't return my teenager to you and
No.
get a better one back. That doesn't.
I mean, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe.
I was
I'm
just
not
checking.
a parent, so I don't know. Maybe
just
maybe
checking.
you
I don't
can.
know. Maybe that's something we want to do. Maybe not. So all right. Now let's talk about some other then sort of classic ruses. So we have known for a long, long time the kind of man in the middle attack, what we call the man in the middle, where we switch, who we're dealing with, and somebody who's not supposed to get the money gets the money, and this happens all the time. And so I think there's an equivalent of that also online that you have some experience with.
Yes.
And somebody lost quite a bit of money. How much did they lose?
Yes, I believe it was $25,000.
Wow.
And it was by an employee. She figured out a loophole in their system, and she was able to get quite a bit of money over months.
Wow.
Until it was found out.
And how is it that you think store owners, as an example, they're not different than any other business owner? So what do you think store owners have to do to be more aware of the potential for these kinds of attacks?
So they definitely need to know what their software company can do,
Okay.
or what their software can do. So most softwares will have different user levels.
Yep.
And what access do all those user levels give. And I think they would be smart to hire a company like you and look at their software company and try and find the loopholes before an actual criminal or somebody who, is just tempted by this opportunity to take a large sum of money kind of falls into their temptation.
And, I'm heartbroken, especially around this time of year. We frequently get calls from new customers who discover us after they've been hit, right? So there's been a cyber breach, a successful attack has come through, and despite their best efforts to keep themselves safer online, nobody can ever reduce the probability of an attack to zero. It's not possible. So I think what we're both saying is, let's use the tools that we have available to us. Let's be careful about who we authorize to do what, as an example, how we protect our systems. That makes a lot of sense. We certainly would argue for educating, not training, because we don't believe in training. We believe in education, a thorough and continuous process where we're all made more self-aware about how our behaviors and our instincts and our inclinations or impulses could translate to somebody making us vulnerable. And we call this the accidental insider. So in our business, we say, these are not people who are intending to be disloyal. So it sounds like your story has a little bit of somebody who was intentionally fraudulent, right? Really trying to rip off their employer, which is equally sad. But I worry more about that accidental insider, the innocent victim who is really trying to do his or her job really well. And especially around this time of year, one of the things we know, and I want our listeners to really think about this, that we are in a period of time where not only are we anxious, as we've talked about, but now we add the holidays, right? As we move through into Thanksgiving and then into Christmas and Diwali and all of the important holidays, Hanukkah, they're all gathered around these next 2 months. And what I'm so aware of is that the behavioral impact of us all being a little more rushed, right?
Yep.
A little more to do. There's the long list of to-dos. I got to get the groceries, and then we're going out, we're meeting friends for drinks, and then we're going to go home and have dinner, and then I have to drop in at my girlfriend's wardrobe and pick up my gift, and So that long list of to-dos increases what psychologists call distractibility. That is, we can take our eye off that all-important safety ball, so we maybe short circuit. So example, maybe we can't quite get back to the store. So are you ever tempted to maybe give your credentials to one of your employees and just let them run with that to do something for you? Would you ever do that, do you think?
I mean, my employees have store keys.
Okay.
And they know how to turn the alarm on and off, obviously, because they open and close the store. And I do stay logged in.
Good.
On things like that. And so, that's probably something I should not do.
Okay. So you're not going to do that anymore, right?
No,
you're going to promise me that you're going to go back?
I'm going to go back to the store after this and log out of everything.
Good, because I think it's important as our listeners discover little tidbits that make them a bit squeamish. We call this cognitive dissonance. So for our viewers, when you hear something, you go, oops, or I think I do that, or you get a little nervous or a little worked up. That's called cognitive dissonance. That's a sign that you should pay attention to, right? You should look inside and go, hey, why is that striking such a chord? Why does that make me so nervous? And so I'll give you a recent example. I was just talking to my bank, and I love my bank. I have to tell you a little plug for York Traditions Bank down here, fabulous bank, and Gina and the whole team at York Traditions. And my favorite branch, the best branch, I would argue, is the downtown branch. And I practically go there. It's like a social event, right? They're a terrific bank. But recently I was compromised because I happened to use my debit card, which I rarely do online, but I happened to use it to make a purchase. And the next thing I know, I've got a huge history. And sure enough, there I was, the guy in the cybersecurity business, right? And I should have known better. And my cognitive dissonance should have said, because it was just because I happened to have my debit card with me and I had that, but my wallet was at home. Because normally I would never do that. I would either use my Apple Pay card, which I love, kudos to Apple, or I would have used a credit card because then there's a control. So the next thing I know, alarm bells going off, calls from my 1-800 number for my bank, my banker sending me, and you have to straighten that mess out. Now, this has happened to me multiple times, and so you'd think that I would remember that, but we fall prey, especially this time of year, to our drive for, efficiency and getting things done, and we're all busy and bustling and, all the things about the holidays, and this is why the cybercriminals feast. Yeah. They feast because we let our defenses down just a wee bit and just enough that they can kind of inch in, and get that wedge, and then you're off and down the slippery slope. So I encourage people to be mindful, and I turn my attention on myself and try and be mindful. So, okay, well, let's maybe turn. Are there any other examples you want to share with us? Did we miss any examples you want to share with our listeners?
One big one.
Oh, a big one?
Yes.
Are they going to get really afraid?
No.
Okay, good.
Careful.
Let's reassure them.
Yes.
Okay.
But counterfeiters ramp up this time of year.
Oh.
So counterfeit designer goods, counterfeit car parts, counterfeit laundry detergent.
Counterfeit laundry detergent.
Yes.
Tell me more.
They fake Tide.
They do not.
They do. Yes.
Well, you really got to wonder why somebody would fake Tide. I mean, what do they have to gain? Is it their okay? So they're looking like they're selling you Tide, but it's not Tide.
It's not Tide.
Wow. And where am I going to find this stuff? So are they wandering around the streets with the Tide van looking like they work for Procter & Gamble? Or, how do I find this stuff? This is weird. So what should I look out for?
So one of the things you want to make sure the website you're buying from is legitimate.
Oh, so you're talking about an online. So this is an online.
Yeah,
okay, so I was wondering whether I was walking the streets of York waiting for the Tide man to kind of jump out and offer me my fake Tide for the season.
I mean, I don't know of anybody in York with fake Tide.
Okay, that's good news.
Yes, but there are...
Because the term glad tidings at holidays could take on a whole new meaning, I'm just saying, so that's my lame humor for this afternoon. I'm going to take another sip of my grape juice.
Yes,
go ahead.
But they fake everything. And so you just want to make sure that the website you're buying from, or the seller from a particular website that you're buying from, is legitimate. And I know we're going to discuss that here in a little bit more depth coming up. But counterfeiters really ramp up this time of year.
Sure. Well, like all the criminals.
Yes, because people
everybody's
are
buying,
right?
Gifts. Everybody.
And
listen,
who doesn't want a great deal
right.
around the holidays, you know, and get a gift for somebody?
This is truly a remarkable statistic, again, for people to know. And it's not, thankfully, another crime statistic. I can give you way too many of those. Not that I'm meaning to scare anybody, but here's a better statistic. At this time of year, between the approach to Black Friday through into New Year's Eve, represents more than a third of most retailers' online volume. So we are going to have an enormous spike. Those 4 or 5 weeks, it depends a little bit on the calendar each year and where things fall, but those 4 or 5 weeks of retail are an intense period of time. And you always are going to see, and viewers can see this, on the news. You know, the things about, hey, place your orders now if you want them guaranteed delivery, Amazon thing. You can see the warehouse shots and people scurrying around like ants. And, you know, it's a crazy busy time of year. So equally, our retailers are busy trying to absorb that volume and work. So this really is a great time, not only for our consumers to be hit, but our retailers and those who work in retailers.
Absolutely.
So very much like the front lines of healthcare with COVID, I wish all of our retailers, they are our heroes at this time of year. They are helping us get all of those last minute gifts into our hands and out to our family and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, well, let's talk a little bit then about something else that's happened. So in addition to it being the holidays, and that, of course, is the whole point of our webcast today, our Facebook Live event, in addition to that, COVID-19 has started to affect stores, right? So we have seen, as we have gone into this, I joke with the bank. I mean, had I walked in with a mask, you know, in January, February of last year, they would have been hitting little alarm bells and, you know, it would have had my buddies from the York Police coming. Now, I mean, we all go in routinely to stores with masks, so maybe we're not quite as recognizable or visible. And I think, again, maybe there's been a shift from in-store to online. I don't know. Tell us about what your experience has been around the shift in business, if any, during COVID.
So it's really funny that we are doing this today because we actually had an incident in store on Sunday. And it was a customer that has been coming in. Hopefully she's not watching.
Okay.
But she has been coming in since June or July.
Is she a criminal? I hope she's not watching. If you're a criminal watching this, stop watching. You are not authorized to watch this Facebook Live event.
So she came in and she attempted to shoplift.
Wow.
And now she had been coming in for months. And one of her earlier visits, I had asked her, like, oh, are you one of the girls from another business who has employees that shop with me? And she said yes. So for months, I've thought she worked for this other business. And so, you know, I've always been asking her how business was. And with the mask, it's really hard for me to even recognize some people. Yep. Some people I can. Some people, I'm like, oh, is that so-and-so? And so she came in. She shoplifted.
Wow.
And while she was actually still in store, I realized that something was missing. Said to my employee, my new employee that I was training, you know, I'll have to check the cameras later. A few minutes go by and the item that was missing magically appears in a different area of the store.
And did you say that deliberately in a voice where you were hoping it would be heard?
I did not. I just mentioned to my employee that I was going to check the cameras, mainly because it was a customer that I thought, you know, business owner, works at another small business. And so, you know, I had just asked her how business was doing, all of this. And so I just kind of said it offhand to my employee. And I went back to kind of start checking cameras. We had more customers come in. So I was like, you know, I'll check them later. And when I checked my cameras on Tuesday, what do I see on the cameras is she's in my store for less than a minute. And the keychain is in her pocket for half an hour. And then when I say, like, oh, I'll check the cameras later.
Reappears.
2 minutes after that, it reappears in the store.
Well, good for you. Not a deliberate tactic, but one that works, right?
Yes.
We actually call this signaling. This happens both online and this happens geopolitically. So for our viewers, you might know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, I'm not sure, Alex, but geopolitical actors like China, Iran, North Korea are constantly targeting us, right? And they're trying to disrupt the Russians too. And they all disrupt in slightly different ways. Some of them are more engaged in disinformation like the Russians, some of them in theft, particularly of intellectual property like the Chinese, and the North Koreans are simply just disruptive politically. And so it's a busy time of year because we see the criminals who have economic intent. We see the cyber lurkers and the disinformation campaigns and all the things related. And we are thankfully now past the election. I'm quite grateful. As you know, Pennsylvania was a very purple state. I'm just glad it's a different color. I was really getting a little tired of that, and I'm so glad we don't have runoff elections like they have in Georgia. I'm sure that anybody who lives in the U.S. will know exactly what I'm talking about. But I do want to point out to our viewers again that there is a really interesting probability that this is going to be a period of time at the holidays intensely different than anything else we've experienced. So we are in a presidential transition. We are in a period of COVID and the pandemic. A statistic that's interesting here that our wonderful executive producer, Michelle, found, it likely stems from the fact that 63% 63% of consumers are indicating they plan to avoid stores and will buy more online, with health concerns due to the pandemic driving that decision for 81% of respondents to this survey. So if we are anticipating that this holiday period is going to be like any other, it's not. It's going to be unlike any other for all the reasons that we know. So as a store owner, let's talk about the things that you might want to worry about both in-store physically and online. What are the kinds of things that you might be watching differently as a result of this shift and the rise in online shopping potentially?
So definitely watching the risk factor that I get on all of my online orders.
Yep.
So we use Shopify.
And tell us about that. So for our viewers who don't know what that is, tell us what a risk factor is,
So
Alex.
when a customer places an order on my website, now it'll be different depending on which e-commerce platform. We happen to use Shopify, which I love. But they give...
Kudos. Great platform.
Yes,
Kudos.
They give me a risk factor attached to every single order.
Wow.
So they look at a couple different factors, but they look at the IP address where the order was placed.
Smart.
In comparison, or regarding
where it is and who and
where their
whether it's
billing
on a watch
address
list,
is, where their
does it
shipping
match?
address is, yes. Does all of that information match? So for store owners, you definitely want to look at that. And before you ship anything, you want to look at that and make sure that it's in one of the places you ship from.
And for any of our criminals who are watching, you want to know we're watching you, right?
Yes,
So there you go.
Exactly. So, I'm going to be looking for that. All of our items that we ship out, we package them now in full view of our store security cameras. So we have proof that we packed this box up and it was not picked up again until the mail carrier came in to pick it up. And if anybody wants to return anything, all of the returns will be opened in clear view of that camera as well. Just so if we do have an issue, I can say, look, I opened the box in view of the camera and I have proof that it wasn't the item, that customer bought. So I'll definitely be watching for return fraud. Going back to your example about using your debit card and you were compromised, we use PayPal to process all of my website payments. And so
my banker actually said that they recommended moving to either PayPal or credit cards exclusively. Never use your debit card online.
And I actually have a story too. I used PayPal, thankfully. And I bought something from an Instagram ad. And I knew it was probably not going to come.
Now, hold on right there.
Yep.
So cognitive dissonance. This is funny. Right after you purchased it, you went, oh, I don't know, right? Right after.
Exactly.
And my podcast co-host, Dr. Tammy Schwartz, and you can listen to us. It's IQ for You. It's one of our podcasts. It's a lot of fun. If you don't know it, you can find it online. But anyway, what's really neat is she said the same thing. She said, I knew it right as soon as I did it.
Yep.
Fascinating. So we have that niggle, but we don't always act on it, right? So tell us your story. Okay,
so I bought
you had the
something.
niggle. Yep.
And surprise, surprise, they send tracking. The tracking doesn't ever update.
Right.
So thankfully, because I used PayPal, I was able to get my $25 back.
Right.
And they didn't get any of my other information. But PayPal's great. I don't see any of my customer information other than their billing address and their shipping address.
Right.
So I see nothing. I don't see their card. Which is great. And so I absolutely love that. And
so that's another tip for our viewers.
Yes.
Is to, if you haven't got a PayPal account, you're going to shop online. Think about that. Or if you don't have a form of payment that, other than a debit card, think carefully about setting one up before the holiday shopping rush, because I think it's probably not wise to not have a more secure form of online payment.
Yes. And then the other thing too, and I wanted to share this graphic with you guys as well, is watching what websites you're purchasing from.
Okay.
This is a great example. This ad actually popped up right before we went live.
Wow.
And so this is an ad from my Instagram.
Yep.
And it might be a little hard for the viewers to see, but those bangles have the Louis Vuitton logo and symbols on them. And
wow. I wouldn't have seen that till you pointed it out. Now I can see it.
And who is that ad being sponsored by?
Right.
So the ad is being sponsored by Etsy. And reputable website. Etsy is a marketplace. But just because Etsy is promoting this ad, what Etsy does is they promote the products that their sellers are selling. And so you would think, oh, well, I'm buying from Etsy. It's a great website. And it is. But you still have to be careful because you can go on Etsy and you can find counterfeit goods. And this is a great example of how somebody could look at that, go, oh, Etsy, okay, it's a reputable website, make the purchase, and hopefully they would realize that at $42, those are not Louis Vuitton bangles.
Wow. Well, I
Hopefully.
hope one of our very frequent viewers and listeners, Tanya, Tifo, we call her. And I hope, Tanya, you're listening to this and watching for those counterfeit goods, because this is a very interesting issue. That looks like an incredibly professionally produced ad. I think
Yeah.
many consumers would have looked at this and not have picked up what you just pointed out. Yeah. Now, we are watching our live feed stream, so if you have questions, viewers can put them right into our chat engine. We have folks watching them. So one of our Facebook Live, doesn't say who, but we've got hundreds of viewers all over on both YouTube and Facebook. So one of you asked, are most of the attacks domestic or foreign in origin? So are they coming onshore from folks in the U.S., or are these counterfeit goods things coming from foreign sources? Do you know the answer to that, Alex?
So it's definitely a mix of both.
Okay.
Now this was many, many years ago,
Okay.
and I wish I could remember what source it was. I'll have to try and find it, and maybe I can send you some links, and you can share them with your
Absolutely.
with your followers.
We'll put them on our CyberconIQ
Yes.
Facebook page.
So one of the statistics that I heard years ago is that more counterfeit goods come into LAX than drugs every hour.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of U.S. sellers of these counterfeit goods, but they're mainly, the goods are coming in from China. So if you're buying a counterfeit online, it could be being shipped from China. It could be being shipped from Texas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I will offer my take. So, being a lawyer who doesn't practice but trained as an attorney or a lawyer, one of the things I always warn people is, in the United States, the instant at which you have counterfeit goods that land in the United States and you were involved in the trafficking, sale, or anything to do with the counterfeit goods, never mind that you didn't manufacture them. You don't have to manufacture them to face either a $2 million fine or 10 years in jail.
Yeah.
As you may know, we take counterfeit goods in the United States very seriously, and the use of anybody's trademark and any trade, any engagement in sales is also the proceeds of criminal activity. So in the United States, it's less of a problem domestically and more of a problem from foreign sources, because almost all of the counterfeit goods are actually manufactured in foreign locations and then, as you say, brought in here. Funny, it's probably clear that, just like many consumers, I'm not sure a lot of folks who are working for CPB would necessarily be as good at spotting counterfeit goods either. I mean, I know we train them and we try to do that, but there's some pretty good fakes out there. It can be very difficult to spot those goods. So
before we go to the next question,
Sure.
I also want to talk about the current trend of repurposing designer goods.
Okay, tell me what repurposing design. I mean, I can imagine, but I suspect my mind is going to places that most viewers don't want it to go.
So, for example, let's say you go to Louis Vuitton and you buy a Speedy. Okay, it's one of their classic styles.
A Speedy. Tell me.
Speedy bag.
A Speedy bag. Okay, a Louis Vuitton Speedy bag.
Yes.
Okay.
And you cut that bag up to make keychains.
Hmm.
Now you're selling keychains made out of the coated canvas that bears the Louis Vuitton copyrighted and trademarked logo and symbols.
Wow.
So those items are still considered counterfeit, because you're taking the item from the way it was originally produced and you're completely changing it and turning it into a different product. And so there's a huge trend right now. They're all over Etsy. There's actually a store in York, not far from us, that is selling these items. And they are illegal because they violate the copyright.
Absolutely. A
And
trademark,
so they're a trademark, yes. So they're still considered counterfeit because of that. So that's a really big trend that people should watch out for. I know there's Apple Watch bands being sold on Etsy. There's bags, there's wallets, there's headbands, shoes, all kinds of things. And so, that is something that when you say counterfeit, people don't typically think of those repurposed items.
Wow. Well, if Stevie's listening, I don't know whether he is. He's at work, so I'm pretty sure he isn't, but hopefully he'll pick this up later. I'm going to tell him I don't want any Louis Vuitton keychains for Christmas.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So there we go. So
Unless it's from Louis Vuitton.
Unless it's really from Louis Vuitton.
Yes,
Right?
then you might want that.
Yeah, good. Well, all right. So, man, the questions are flooding in. Maybe people suddenly realize they could do that. So this is from one of our listeners, one of our viewers, Jessica. As a consumer, can I even trust a small business for online shopping? Well, Alex, I bet you have a perspective on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Do tell.
Absolutely. So like I was mentioning earlier, we use Shopify and we also use PayPal to process all of our payments. So as a small business, none of their information is ever saved on my website. It's simply transferred through to PayPal. So PayPal keeps all of that information secured. So I don't see any of their information, and I think it's pretty secure. The only information that's stored on my end would be their shipping address and their billing address, which most of the time I think is public record. You can find that almost anywhere. The York City Police shared a really cool website with me when I was tracking down this shoplifter with them,
Right.
and you would be amazed at what you could find.
Unfortunately, I would not be amazed.
You probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, our viewers
I
might
was
be.
a
Our
little
viewers
surprised.
might be very surprised.
I looked
but
myself up
yeah.
on this website, and I was a little surprised, and anybody can use it.
Right.
So,
Well, and again, this brings us to an important topic around this time of year. We really do try to get the message out. That's what this is, and we'll have a whole series of campaigns over the next little while to try and keep our viewers and our families and their families safer online, right? And you can never keep yourself incredibly safe, fully safe. You can get very close. You can drive down through awareness and planning and some anticipation. So this leads right into this question. So this is from another listener. This is Bella. It looks like Bella, yeah. Should I look for alternate safer payments like Venmo, Apple Pay, credit as opposed to a credit card? So this is referring to my earlier breach. So I'll answer, certainly credit cards safer than debit cards. And certainly Apple Pay, I've got to tell you, hats off to Apple Pay. They have, I think, an incredibly good system of careful controls. And so I love Apple Pay and I love my Apple Wallet. They're both, for me, extraordinarily good products. Do you have others that you would recommend besides PayPal? Are there any other systems you can think of that you might want to recommend to our viewers?
I use PayPal a lot.
Okay.
I'm kind of the weird 28-year-old. I don't use Venmo.
Okay.
But a lot of my friends do.
Okay.
And I haven't heard of any of them having issues with, their information being hacked through
Right.
Venmo. But
And you got Google Pay, GPay,
Yes.
and we've got
Yeah.
So I would suggest that any of those, a couple of things for our viewers, and we train people, of course, how to avoid cybercrime inside organizations. But we also have a version of this that's based on my book. So if you haven't purchased my book, then you might want to think about getting that. It's an Amazon bestseller, I can tell you. But I also mostly prescribe it for people who have trouble sleeping. And there's its cover, so protecting ourselves from big tech and bigger lies. One of the things I tell consumers in the book is you can't solve this problem. This technology problem will not be solved with more technology. So I really do agree we should be looking at alternate payment forms, and that's good. And that's a part of a technology solution. That'll make you somewhat safer, but I still fall back on, even if you think you've got a safe form of payment, to always be aware as you're using it, what you're using it for. And I think that ties our whole thesis together, right?
Yes.
And we want to be careful that we don't just rely on technology. You can't rely, as I say in the book, on somebody else to keep you safe. It's your job to keep yourself safer online. And I think that that's an important message. So now that leads us to another question. Again, I don't, just reminding my staff to try to give me the name. So I apologize. I don't have the live stream in front of us here in the studio, but a viewer, quite a nice viewer, I think, somebody nice, said, what should we look for on fake websites? And I think that this came right after you put the Etsy thing up. So what are the specific tactics that a viewer could use to help spot a fake website?
So the biggest one is going to be to check for spelling and grammatical errors.
Always. We teach that in our training too.
Yes, that is number one. Also, look at their photos. Are they using stock photos? As a small business, I have a product photographer that comes in and does all of my product photos.
Mm-hmm.
They are by no means stock photos. They look really good, but most companies will use their own photos. It's very rare that they use stock photos.
Right.
And the other thing to look at is the price. To go back to that Etsy ad, that bracelet was $41.47, I think, something like that. Obviously, that's not a real Louis Vuitton bracelet. And so if you also go look at the rest of what that seller is selling, which I did because I clicked on that ad to see it, all they have are counterfeit pieces. They're very careful about not putting the name anywhere in the title or the description, but you can see that it is counterfeit.
Right.
So you want to look at what else the sellers are selling. You want to look at their reviews and price too. If the price is too good, most of the time it's not going to be authentic.
So I'm reminded myself of two great personal stories. Now, my mother feels obligated, I don't know why, to listen and watch to just about everything I do, and it's always nice to have a mother.
So
It is sweet. So she's probably up in Toronto right now as we speak, watching this event. So, Mom, if you're listening, she made me take Latin in grade 10, and I was one of the last years that actually had access to Latin. And I thought at the time, why am I studying Latin? And my mother was an English major, and she knew that there was great value that I would probably gain later in life. Ironically, when it became most valuable to me is when I went to law school, because of course in law school, so much of the law is derived from words that have Latin roots and Latin origins. So I am aware of the Latin phrase caveat emptor. Do you know what that means?
I don't.
You do not. So caveat emptor, maybe our viewers do, maybe they don't. Caveat emptor in Latin means buyer beware. Now, it's not particularly important until I link it to my second story. So caveat emptor, hold on to that. And now the second thing is in my third year finance class, when I was doing my undergraduate business degree, a very long time ago, I heard you say your age, and I'm not going to look at you hatefully. Okay, so a long time ago when I was in third year finance, I had a professor who screamed from the front of the chalkboard, "No free lunch." And his point was, if something looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. We all have a sense, or we should have a sense, of imputed value. This is what caveat emptor means. Take this advice, folks. If you think you're getting a deal, and I'm reminded of a dear friend, and I had some time living and being in Southeast Asia, and I went to Hong Kong a lot. And so a dear friend of mine goes off to Hong Kong for the first time, and he comes back, and he's so excited, and he announces, "I just bought myself a new Rolex watch," and I'm smiling because I know exactly what is about to happen, right? And he describes the fact that because of all the competition in Hong Kong, I mean, it's the commercial center of the world. I mean, the stuff they have there, and there's all this competition. So, I mean, I go into this store, and when I don't buy the first watch, he says to me, well, he says, you can't tell anybody, but I have some Rolex watches here. And he goes on with a story about, sure enough, you and I both know exactly what just happened. Yeah. So his $300 Rolex, trust me, it was a fake $300 Rolex. There is no question about that. But it was a great copy. Now, if you are engaged in that and you want to do that, I'm not going to moralize. It's not up to me. But caveat emptor says, look, you should know that if you really want to own a Rolex watch, there is no place in the world, no matter how much competition there is in the marketplace, where you're going to buy a Rolex watch for $300. And I guess caveat emptor, no free lunch, they're all the same kinds of things. We should probably all be aware. Again, we have our inner spidey sense that tells us if the deal's too good, the deal's probably too good. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that brings me to another topic then. So as a business owner, and you and I both own businesses, we're busy people. How do you separate your personal life from your business life, and how do you make sure they don't bleed over? Because one of the things I worry about is I'm a public voice of this company. I'm out there all the time. And I worry that can make me more of a target in my personal life for a variety of reasons. How do you deal with that, and what do you do to deal with those kinds of issues as a business owner?
So I have a separate phone for the business.
Okay.
That does not leave the business unless it needs some type of repair.
Okay.
And so that stays in the store, and it is an iPhone. And, it's either on my person or one of my employees when they're working at all times.
Okay.
And one of the other things we do is when customers call or text us, we don't save their numbers in the phone. That way, if somebody were to get a hold of it, they just have a bunch of phone numbers, which they could get
with no identifying information.
With no identifying information.
Smart. Yeah.
And we do go through and also delete messages from time to time. It does get a little confusing because a customer will text us and we're like, "Hey, girl, who are you?" Especially if we've just gone through and done a clean out and we don't have any prior messages to go back through. So I keep those separate just because it's easier. Plus, if I'm not in the store, I can't answer a question, most likely, if somebody calls me. So I need to keep, that line open for the store. And I also restrict who has access to our Instagram and social media accounts. So those are logged into on the store phone because my girls are doing them. They should be doing them right now while I'm not in there. But they aren't giving
we kind of hope they're watching us. I think they're probably watching us.
Yeah, they can watch. They can watch. She can multitask.
Okay.
And, I don't give my employees access, like passwords to our Instagram and Facebook, and there's just no point if I can have the store phone and have them access it there.
Right. And for those of you who are less familiar with CyberconIQ, and particularly if you're a first-time viewer or you're just discovering us, a really important part of our training is our SAVE. We have an acronym, SAVE, S-A-V-E, and we say the tagline is "Save yourself from yourself." And let me just share with our viewers what it is. So in any situation, and you've indicated the need to separate, business and personal, I would say this is a tactic that can work in either. This can work for our families and viewers at home, for your kids, for teenagers, for adults, for elderly parents, if you're worried about them online, or in a business. It's the same thing. We say these simple steps. S is stop. So first of all, in the busyness and the hustle and bustle of the holidays, remember this is about the cybercriminals feasting at the holidays, during this really busy time of year when we're so easily distracted, sometimes just stop and ask yourself, have I seen this situation before? That's the next step we call assess. Have I seen this before? Is this somebody I know? Is this somebody we've done business with before? Is this a vendor I know? Is this, is this real, right? So stop, assess. Then we suggest validating and verifying, and I think you would agree, outside the original chain. So if you're a little bit confused, you don't really remember the number, there's not a name attached to the number, you're not sure who it is, look it up. Go back to your entry in your address book as opposed to relying on the fact that somebody says they are somebody with a different number. I mean, you don't know.
Right.
Look carefully at the differences in area codes. If somebody says they're from someplace, you don't recognize the area code. Super simple. Pop open your browser, ask Google, where's the area code? Validate and verify all the steps we were talking about earlier, right? And that's S-A-V, validate and verify. And then E. So when you have that cognitive dissonance, when you really know something is not right, or you think, before you click, before you place the order, before you're ready to make that purchase, why don't you get engaged with somebody else? Ask somebody else, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, a friend, a coworker, a colleague, whatever you are. Just engage before you execute, because after you've hit that button, that's what we call the last click in the human firewall. After you've done that, it's a little bit too late. Now you're just in recovery and remediation. And it just makes us sad because there are 4 simple steps. Save, right? Stop, assess, validate, verify, and engage. And do that before you click.
Yes.
So, well, it's been really delightful. I'm going to finish up now by telling you that on our assessment, so if you've not done our MyQ assessment, you can also find out how to do that online. Many of you, I'm sure, who are watching have. So our MyQ assessment puts your impulses and instincts into a quadrant, a personality quadrant, and I think you're a particular quadrant. We can show the viewers which quadrant you are. So we're going to do da-da-da-da, and you are?
Risk breaker.
You are a risk breaker. So there you are. You join many of our staff. We have a bunch of folks in that quadrant. So in our model, the 4 quadrants, you are somebody who is risk averse, right? So you're not really a risk taker. And that's interesting because you're an entrepreneur. So you are used to taking risks, but you're careful. They're careful, calculated risks, safe bets. So we know you like that. And you are rule abiding. And we can tell already from many of your answers today, I suspect when there's a policy, a procedure, you're going to do it, right?
Yep.
A follows B, follows C. We do it the same way all the time. We're all happy, right?
Yep.
So you love that structure, that order, that control. That's where you are. That's who you are. And so that actually makes you a relatively safe. Did you know that?
No.
It makes you a relatively safe quadrant. In fact, you are on average 10% less likely to fall for most cyber attacks than other people. We've actually done quantitative analysis with a proprietary methodology that allows us to compare the risk of your particular quadrant with a bunch of online threats. And so that's how we know that. Now, can you guess which one I might be in? Oh,
The risk taker?
You're close. Keep going.
The risk maker.
Maker. Yes, there you go. So I'm completely opposite to you. I mean, we couldn't be more different in some ways, right? And that's because I'm really risk tolerant, maybe even risk seeking. I like taking risks. Again, I want them to work out. I put a lot of time and attention into making sure that they are going to work, but I don't mind risk. I like taking risks, especially if they're going to have some payoff, some rewards, some return. And I've never met a set of rules I particularly wanted to follow. I'm somebody who challenges the status quo and just does things by instinct. I've learned to trust my instincts. So you and I have very different risk profiles because I am 4% actually riskier than the average. So you are in a safer quadrant and I'm in a riskier quadrant. Now, what's interesting is we would tell you that we would need to train you and I in two very different ways, and we don't necessarily even believe training works. We think more about education, right? How do we continually get everybody to understand their style, and what does that mean? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples that might strike you as interesting.
Okay.
So do you know what vector will almost always make you fall prey online? So what do you think is an attack that would really work well against you?
Oh, man. Maybe a limited time sale.
That's interesting. That actually does work somewhat in your quadrant, but it normally works better with risk takers, because if you offer some kind of risk or reward that's outsized or time limited, it gets them a little worked up and they tend to fall for it. Now, here's the thing that works for you. So you follow the rules, right, all the time. Do you always follow the rules?
99% of the time.
And 99% of the time. Good. Yeah. Well, that's a big variance. That 1% makes you just audacious and risky. Okay, so the 99% of the time that you follow the rules. So here's what's interesting. You will actually fall prey to attacks that look like people in authority telling you that it's okay to break the rules, or telling you you've already broken the rules. Here's what's very interesting. The psychology for you that you should be aware of during these holidays is things like this. The IRS calling you because your taxes haven't been filed properly, or they want to talk to you, or your social security number's being compromised. Those are examples, because those are people in authority, right? Or if somebody in authority, so you don't have a boss because you're independent. But as an example, if I was deep faking you with the licensing director at the City of York.
Right. Yeah. I would
Who
be
said,
concerned.
Yeah. Of course you see.
Yeah.
Of course you'd be concerned, because this is my business license. And so away you go, right? So what's interesting is, again, we can never make ourselves perfectly safe online, but hopefully just this little bit of time together with our wonderful guest, and I really appreciate you being here.
Yes,
It's
thank
my
you.
absolute pleasure to have had you here with us today. But hopefully this time together has helped educate all of us just a little bit about the kinds of things that we do need to do, especially at the holidays, to stay online. So again, Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
We will now take any more questions. I don't know, my staff can come by and let me know if there are any last lingering questions from our viewers. There are a couple of minutes for them to take it.
Yes.
Now, remind our viewers again, where is your store if they want to come visit?
So I am at 38 North Beaver Street
Okay.
in York, just about a block away.
Okay, and if they want to visit you online, because most of our visitors are not right here, or most of our viewers are not right here in York, so if they don't want to visit New York, where can they get you online?
They can go to our Facebook page, which is My Girlfriend's Wardrobe. They can also go to our Instagram, also My Girlfriend's Wardrobe, or they can visit us online at mygirlfriendswardrobe.net or .com.
Great. Well, try to spend some time, if you have a chance, viewers, with our wonderful guest store. It is legitimate. She's a good small business. She will protect all of your information online. So again, thank you for joining us. Oh, looks like we have one more inbound question. So looks like we have a viewer question. Let's see what they say. So our last question of the event. Ooh, here's a really good one. You ready?
Yep.
So last question of the event. Should I trust a small business that uses credit card machines like Square that plug into their phone? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
tell me why. Yes. Yes.
we-
So first of all, yes says our expert. So that's
Yes.
good. You can be the expert on this.
So we actually use Square, but I have their point of sale system. So we have a dedicated
Okay.
tablet to Square. And so Square does not store any of their customer information.
Okay.
The only thing I can see when a customer uses their credit card is their name, unless they have it hidden with their credit card, and the last 4 digits of their card and the type of card it is.
Great.
And that is the only time I ever look at that
Okay.
is when I have a shoplifter who buys something
Mm-hmm.
and uses a card,
Yep.
like I did on Sunday.
Right. There we go.
And otherwise, I don't pay any attention to that. But Square does not save, like on my end, none of their card information is saved unless they choose to save their card information with me, which I have to send them a special form to do. So just making a regular purchase in store with your card there's no option to save your information.
And a little plug, I happen to know some folks at Square, a little plug. They are also really, really good at fraud analytics and some of the things behind the scene. They have a really good way of detecting it. So I would add them to the safe list of vendors for the holiday season. So again, thank you. Alex, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you to my entire team who make this so easy to do. Those of us in front of the camera always look good because we have excellent work here, especially to our in-studio producer, Chris, who's there smiling because he's almost at the end of his day. So thank you very much. We will now move off of our live events because we've taken our questions. You can find information on all of our social media properties at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to reach us after this event or you want to find more information, you can find our websites. You can find us online, social, whatever it is that you might want to do. You can reach us at cyberconIQ.com. And in the meantime, please have a wonderful, safe, and happy holiday. Don't let the criminals feast on you. Instead, why don't you feast on them? So be on and watch out for the CyberCon. Happy holidays, everyone.